Okay, so welcome back. Let's get into the main um, analysis of this literary example. Okay, so we just read this one that's just all in black, but then here is it broken down into different sections on how to do a simple, this is more of an advanced analysis. So in the blue, you'll see that it points out the main idea and then reiterating also the main idea, which is the voice of a perceptive, independent 6-year-old, and at the same time, it is the mature voice of a woman telling about her child in retrospect. So using the point of view of Scout is the main strength of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is kind of like a thesis statement, a smaller one, but still an argument that can be made that it's the strength of To Kill a Mockingbird uh, with using the point of view of Scout both in her adult point of view and also her 6-year-old 6-year-old point of view, the younger point of view. Then and then it reiterates it at the end, just like in a concluding statement as we discussed. When you conclude even a short literary analysis, you reiterate what your main idea was or your main argument. In the pink, however, we start getting analysis of, well, yeah, it's mainly the analysis. It's kind of obviously an advanced analysis versus literary analysis. This pink section would usually kind of come actually after the green section, where it's analyzing quotes and sections from the text, which we'll see in the next example. But in this case, it's this big chunk where the author of this advanced analysis is giving further point to the idea that using Scout's point of view and the voices and blending her adult voice with Scout's adult voice, that is, with her Scout's younger 6-year-old self, gives a reflection on the events that are really that are going on during this period where Atticus Finch, Scout's father, is defending Tom Robinson, who is a black man, and in this time, black men or even any black people, it was a very racist time, so they immediately thought, hey, he's black, he was there, he's guilty. Alright, so let's go into the example of a literary analysis. This is a deeper analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird. So let's go into this and then we'll go into that colored breakdown. In the book, the white upper-class people of Maycomb fall subject to ethnocentrism. They believe that they are normal, superior, and anything else is strange. Even if they haven't met them, they prejudge the different and condemn them to a lowly life. This is their way of staying on top of the social hierarchy, because if they did not prejudge other classes, their position as the highest class would be in jeopardy, and the lower classes would rise up and take their place. An example of this is the way Tom Robinson helped Mayella Ewell, a girl from the least trusted white family in the town. When the two were caught together, Mayella accused Tom of rape, and only because it was considered abnormal that a black man should help and feel sorry for a white woman. When the case went to trial, Tom was found guilty because the white upper class of Maycomb would rather believe that a black man raped a girl and put him in jail than accept the given physical evidence that suggested that Tom was there to help Mayella and set him free, because if it was allowed, black and white would interact and the status quo would change. Although Tom didn't win his case, at least one person in the town of Maycomb sees the consequences of racial bias in the courtroom. There's nothing more sickening to me than a white man who will take advantage of a Negro's ignorance. Don't fool yourselves. It's all adding up, and one of these days we're gonna pay the bill for it. This was stated by Atticus Finch, pages 233 to 234. Lee created this as part of the novel storyline to show that even with people such as the character of Atticus Finch, this system of prejudging and discriminating is apparent all over the earth and can be dated back to the beginning of time, not only in recent years. Humans feel a compulsive need to be at the top of the social hierarchy, whether it be killing off the competition, such as in the days of the cavemen, or using prejudice to neglect another class to stay on top. It is part of our mindset that to stay on top, we need to beat the rest. Also, many characters in the novels were created to reinforce the major plot. So, breaking that down into actually 4 sections this time, because now we're using black colored font for a fourth section. We start with the blue, kind of giving a background to the people of Maycomb and their ideas when it comes to staying on top of the hierarchy. So the upper class of Maycomb fall subject to ethnocentrism. They believe that they are normal, superior, and anything else is strange. So this not only comes in with Tom Robinson, the black man who's accused of rape, but also when it comes to another character who's a white character, but he's kind of a recluse, and that kind of means he just stays in his house and doesn't really talk to people. And that's considered weird as well. So anything strange or unusual is considered wrong, and you have to prejudge them, because if you're not judging someone, you're being judged. So that's where it leads to the black part, which is actually the author stating their opinion, their argument, their thesis statement, if you will. This is their way of staying on top of the social hierarchy, because if they did not prejudge other classes, their position as the highest class would be in jeopardy, and the lower classes would rise up and take their place. So this is an opinion that can be supported by the text, which is what is in the green, not only from a scene where it's talking about Tom Robinson helping ELA, a girl from a white family in town, not least trusted, but still a white family compared to this black man. And when they're caught, she doesn't want to get in trouble for hanging around a black man, so she accuses him of rape just to get herself out of trouble. And they believe her because it's easier to think that a black man raped a poor white girl than to believe that a white girl would want to be in the company of a black man during this time. And then that leads to the pink section, which is kind of going back to the thesis statement. So after you use an example from the text, whether it's just an example like this from a scene or an example from a quote, the pink, you have to analyze that quote and bring it back to your thesis and how these sections in green support your main thesis. And then at the end, there's more black. Also, many of the characters in the novels were created to reinforce the major plot. This is probably not the end of this literary analysis. This is more giving another opinion. So there might be more to this. And this is probably just a little excerpt of the example. So this is leading into another support or another opinion, which can be supported through textual evidence later on in a literary analysis. So that's breaking down sort of what you'll be doing for your short story. And it's nice to see them kind of color-coded just so that you get an idea of the different sections that go into this and what you should be looking for when you're reading your short stories, and also what you should be looking for when we go through the example together. So when I read this example tomorrow, before we start highlighting and stuff and annotating, you need to start looking and analyzing in your head, thinking, what is Miss McCarthy going to annotate the next day? And if you want to print out your own copy, I will link you guys a copy if you want to print out your own, if you have a printer, or if you want to somehow make your own copy that you can somehow highlight. I don't know if you can do that with a PDF. That's something you guys are going to have to play around with yourself. I'll try to figure it out myself, and if I figure it out, I'll let you know. But regardless, feel free to annotate as you go if you have a printer. If you want to print off both copies and annotate as I do the first read-through, and then take another copy and annotate exactly what I annotate, just so that you have 2 different copies and a fresher copy, go right ahead. That might be a good idea. But this is what you should be thinking about, not just, so breaking down quotes that you could use or ideas. So what are the themes of what we're going to be reading down at the dinghy? What are the quotes that could support themes? Think about characters and how they support the main theme and the main idea of the story. All right, so that is our first thing today. Let's get into the second one. So this is a bigger PowerPoint. I know you guys are thrilled. Another PowerPoint, yay! Seriously, how do I exit out of this? Okay. So there's going to be multiple videos today because this one's longer. But let's get into this one before we run out of time for the second video. So this is kind of a review and a deeper review of the ideas that we already went through over in the topic, but I want to go over them again with examples because that's going to help you guys out in the long run, and these PowerPoints will give you a good reference point, especially when we go on to literary analysis of the short stories for your final assessment. Again, don't worry about that yet, but know that it's coming up in the future. So remember, literary analysis wants the writer to explain what a work of literature means and how you determine that meaning. So a literary analysis wants the writer to come up with an argument and support their argument from with textual evidence. Okay. For literary analysis, you need to focus on specific attributes of the text. So attribute is a noun, and it's a noun that means a quality or feature regarded as a characteristic or inherent part of someone or something. Something being the literary text in this instance. And then 1, identify the specific attributes of the text to develop an arguable thesis that tells the reader how that attribute makes meaning for a story. And then 2, provide your thesis with specific reasons that help how that attribute is used in the text. So text evidence from the story. When analyzing a story, so when we're analyzing down at the dinghy and then when you go on to your short story, these are something that you should keep in mind. What essential elements does the story have? What's the theme or the main idea, what the work adds up to? A lot of times this is the moral of the story sometimes. The plot, relationships, and pattern of events. Characters, the people the author creates, including the narrator of the story or the speaker of a poem. So there's sometimes a narrator character, just like we talked about in To Kill a Mockingbird. Scout, her older self and her 6-year-old self were the narrators, but they were also characters in the story, or at least the little girl version was a character in the story. Setting, when and where the action happens. Point of view, perspective, or attitude of the narrator or speaker. Also, ask yourself what rhetorical elements are used in the story, called figurative language, rhetorical elements, rhetorical choices. What is the overall meaning of the story? What is the theme, or sometimes they have multiple themes, especially in a longer piece. In a short story that you guys will be reading and that we'll be reading down at the dinghy, mostly it's going to have 1 or 2 themes, but longer stories or book series, like Harry Potter, gotta keep coming back to that, a lot of times has multiple themes. So what elements in the story help contribute to the theme? Characterization, plot, figurative language, other elements that we went over before, literary elements, metaphors. Identify elements of figurative language. Structure. How is the story structured? So, this is what we were talking about in the Pixar theme. So you guys should have looked up these words if you didn't already know them, and so that you could give yourself a definition so you understood what each part of the Pixar short story and what parts of the story are and what they mean. Again, you should know this by now in 11th grade. You should have gone over this before. So it starts with the exposition, and I see we're about to run out of time, so I'm going to make another video. Sorry, we're stopping it here. And then we're going to continue on to part 3, and that should be the last video of the day. Crossing fingers. So stay tuned.